For decades, the world's superpowers have been engaged in a silent and relentless race for technological dominance. Satellites have been launched, underground laboratories have flourished, and the skies have become the stage for experiments that defy common understanding. Amid this competition, China has stood out not only for the speed at which it advances, but for the enigmatic nature of some of its projects. Little is known about the backstage operations fueling the innovation machinery that has quietly emerged behind the walls of the Red Dragon, but one thing is certain: the future is being shaped far from the public eye. Recently, a series of extraordinary technological initiatives has placed China at the center of strategic and scientific discussions. Aerial vehicles multiplying in the sky like swarms, radars that seem to see the invisible, satellite constellations redrawing space. All of this sounds like fiction, but carries the weight of verified data and active projects. As these advances accumulate, a question grows between the lines of military reports and presentations. Is China preparing a silent transition to a new form of power, one exercised not with words, but with invisible presence and total influence? Welcome to another night, where mysteries never sleep. I'm Midnight, and this is 7 Nights. Before we begin, I'd like to ask for your help. Like the video, leave a comment, and subscribe to the channel. Just one click, but it makes a huge difference in helping YouTube show these videos to more people and allows me to keep bringing this content to you. I'm counting on you. Let's get to the video. Have you ever imagined an aerial vehicle so advanced that it doesn't need a pilot or traditional weapons to dominate the skies? Now imagine that this vehicle can launch hundreds of drones at once and coordinate them as if they were parts of a single organism. This is not science fiction. This is the Geoton, and it already exists. Unveiled by China in 2025, the Geoton, which means 9 heavens, is more than a ship. It's a flying brain. It acts as a mothership platform for autonomous drone swarms, capable of reconfiguring in real time and responding to threats or targets with a level of precision no human pilot could achieve. We're talking about a complete shift in the logic of aerial warfare. Now, whoever commands the sky no longer needs to be in it. The scariest thing about the Geoton isn't what it does. It's what it represents. For the first time, a power can project military force without relying on bases or pilots. This craft can be launched from anywhere and remain airborne for hours, even days, coordinating attacks, spying, and interfering with communications. Do you realize the scale of advantage this represents? And there's more. The drones it releases are not just flying cameras. Some specialize in signal jamming. Others simulate targets to confuse enemy defenses. And others attack. All of this is managed by an artificial intelligence system that adapts the mission based on the environment. This means that war, as we knew it, is over. The future is no longer made of tanks. It's made of algorithms. The Geoton structure was designed for invisibility. Stealth materials, aerodynamic design, and radar-absorbing layers. It doesn't show up on maps. It acts in the shadows. And those shadows stretch across entire areas, often without anyone noticing. How do you respond to an enemy you don't even know is there? The project is part of the Made in China 2025 plan, a strategy aimed at placing China at the top of the global technological chain. But this vehicle is more than a technical breakthrough. It's a symbol of autonomy. The entire Geoton structure was developed on Chinese soil. No part depends on foreign suppliers. That changes the global game. Now imagine this kind of system on a large scale. The Geoton's command system is based on tactical hierarchy among the drones themselves. Some take leadership of microgroups. Others act as relays. It's like an intelligent swarm. And this didn't come out of nowhere. Engineers were inspired by the behavior of animals, like flocks of birds and insect colonies. Biology and technology merging to create something new, something terrifyingly efficient. And here's a detail: the name Geoton carries symbolic weight. It comes from Chinese cosmology, where the 9 heavens represent higher levels of existence. Naming a war machine after this is more than marketing. It's almost a declaration, a statement that this technology is above, in every sense. Now think with me, if today we know about the Geoton because it was officially presented, how many similar projects are being tested, hidden, waiting for the right moment to be revealed? How many of these motherships are already in the sky, without us even noticing? Because here's the hardest truth to face. Maybe the future is already flying above us, and we'll only realize it when it's too late. At first glance, it seems like just another scientific acronym among so many military projects. But when China announced advances in the development of quantum radar, the more attentive analysts understood that this was something out of the ordinary. What's at stake here isn't just security or surveillance. It's the ability to see what, until now, was impossible to detect. This radar operates with entangled photon pairs, particles of light that share such a precise connection that any alteration in one instantly affects the other. The science behind this is real, and the application even more so. With this technology, it becomes possible to detect objects that don't reflect conventional radio waves. Stealth aircraft, spy drones, and perhaps even other things that prefer to remain hidden. Tests released by the Nanjing National Laboratory indicate a range of up to 96 kilometers. This means that, in theory, any object crossing that space can be tracked, even if it emits no signal or heat. A window has been opened to see beyond the conventional, and it's no exaggeration to think that, through it, we might be glimpsing something we didn't even know existed. There's a curious detail to all this. Some of these scans weren't done in combat zones, but in remote, mountainous areas, far from cities and heavy air traffic. What exactly is being monitored in these places? Some say that the quantum radar is being tested for far more than just invisible fighter jets. What if this equipment is detecting phenomena that challenge our understanding? If that sounds like fantasy, it's worth remembering. The technical reports themselves mention non-reproducible photonic events. In plain language, things that showed up in readings but couldn't be explained, and more importantly, couldn't be recreated in the lab. That raises a direct and uncomfortable question. Are we talking about errors, or about discoveries we don't yet know how to classify? While the West cautiously and transparently debates the possibility of extraterrestrial contact, China follows a more reserved path. Everything is under state control, which means that if something is detected and it's not convenient to disclose it, the chances of us finding out are minimal. And this silence isn't just policy, it's part of the strategy. This is where things get even more interesting. There's speculation that the quantum radar might not only detect, but also interfere. Interfere with what? Communication systems, satellites, or even the electromagnetic behavior of the atmosphere itself. This possibility transforms a surveillance tool into a weapon of subtle and extremely effective influence. Some Chinese scientists have already suggested, in academic papers, that this type of radar could be used to study the interaction between natural phenomena and unidentified objects. It's not a direct claim, but the wording is precise, almost as if they wanted to leave a clue without committing to it. Could these tests be part of a larger investigation? The complexity of quantum radar challenges even the experts. But what starts as experimental physics could very well become a game changer in how we look at the world and what exists above it. Because once you start seeing the invisible, you can't pretend it's not there. So the question is no longer how does it work, but rather, what exactly are they looking for with it? If you look up at the sky on a clear night, you'll see stars, maybe a planet or two, and with some luck, a satellite streaking through the darkness like a moving point of light. But what you might not know is that there's a quiet, ambitious plan to turn that sky from a simple backdrop into a game board. And whoever controls that board controls more than just space. They control information, surveillance, communication, and influence. That plan has a name, Shenfan. Shenfan, loosely translated as 1,000 sails in the wind, is the name of the mega-constellation of satellites that China began launching in recent years. The official goal is to connect the entire planet with high-speed internet. But that's just the surface. Behind this civil announcement lies a network that, when complete, will have more than 15,000 satellites in low Earth orbit, a number that surpasses even the SpaceX projects. Why would a nation need that many? Each of these satellites is not just a signal repeater. Many carry thermal imaging sensors, motion detection systems, communication scanning tools, and spectral analysis capabilities. This means that, together, they form a global monitoring system, an invisible grid that can observe almost everything happening on the planet's surface in real time, from the movement of military fleets to wildfires and population flows. But it doesn't stop there. An internal document released by European defense experts points out that part of the Shenfan satellites may be equipped with interference capabilities. Interference in what? communication networks, GPS signals, military transmissions, and even other nations' satellites. This changes the constellation's nature from an information access tool to a potential weapon of disinformation and strategic disorientation. There's something highly symbolic in the choice of the name, 1,000 sails. In Chinese tradition, sails in the wind represent navigation and control of direction. And that's exactly what's at stake, direction. Direction over the flow of data, over what is transmitted, and most importantly, over what is blocked. The sky, once a neutral place, is being reshaped to serve very specific interests. What's most intriguing is that Shenfan doesn't rely on international authorization to keep expanding. It exploits legal loopholes in the Outer Space Treaty, which never anticipated the creation of thousands of satellites by a single country. By taking advantage of this legal vacuum, China secures for itself an unprecedented edge: the dominance of low Earth orbit without facing sanctions or political blocks. That's pure and silent strategy. The modular nature of the satellites allows for remote updates, meaning what transmits internet today could tomorrow map mining fields, analyze volcanic areas, or track troop movements. All this without anyone on Earth noticing a thing. It's like having floating cameras that change function depending on the moment's need. The project is so vast that it includes partnerships with developing countries. The offer? Free internet access in rural and isolated regions. A praiseworthy initiative at first glance. But what comes along with that connection? Data. A lot of data. Browsing habits, locations, preferences. Shenfan is not just a network that watches. It's a network that learns, and that completely changes the game. Experts following the project fear that, with Shenfan's advancement, it may become possible to track individuals with centimeter-level precision. In a world where privacy is already in decline, a constellation with that kind of capability represents a new form of power. A power that doesn't impose itself with tanks or rifles, but with eyes that never sleep. And if all of this still seems like theory, consider that the project is already at an advanced stage. Hundreds of satellites are already operating, and each new launch expands this silent web that now covers the planet. The lingering question is, when everything is fully operational, who will control whom? Imagine being in a place where everything is silent. A deep valley surrounded by mountains, where the only sound expected comes from space. That's where FAST is, the largest radio telescope on the planet. But the most impressive thing about it isn't its size, it's what it's searching for. Because contrary to what the media usually reports, FAST isn't just looking for pulsars and black holes. There's another goal, one that's rarely spoken about aloud. Have you heard of the Far Neighbor Project? Few people have. It's China's arm of the SETI project, aimed at detecting signals from technological civilizations beyond Earth. And yes, that includes the search for intelligent life in the universe. The question is, what are they finding that they don't want to share? In 2022, reports emerged that FAST had picked up a signal coming from the constellation Lyra, a pattern that stood out because it didn't repeat naturally, and which vanished shortly after. The official explanation came quickly: terrestrial interference. But why did that particular noise, among so many, merit weeks of internal analysis before being dismissed? It's not theory, it's a pattern. Every time something unusual is detected, the cycle repeats. Silence, investigation, and a generic response that ends the matter. But what if the signals being filtered aren't just noise? What if they are real patterns, simply not understood? That's the question hanging over FAST, and it only grows as more data goes undisclosed. Another point that draws attention is how FAST is being used to monitor objects within our own solar system. Few people talk about this, but the telescope has the capability to track probes, asteroids, and any body that emits or reflects radio waves. In other words, it serves not only to listen to the distant universe, but to observe what passes closer than we imagine. And what if I told you there's evidence suggesting China may also be using this instrument to send out signals? That's right. A practice called METI, actively sending messages to potential civilizations. There's no official confirmation, but subtle clues appear in academic publications, conferences, and documents that leak briefly before disappearing. What stands out most in all of this is the isolation of FAST. It's located in a total radio silence zone, where radio signals are legally prohibited. The perfect environment to capture any whisper from the universe. but also the ideal setting to conceal any reply. How far does scientific pursuit go, and where does strategic interest begin? Because if FAST discovers something that changes our understanding of the universe, do you really think that information would be shared with the whole world? When a country holds the largest ear on the planet turned toward the sky, it's not just listening to what comes from out there. It's choosing what the rest of the world gets to hear. Have they already heard something that we weren't meant to know? When we talk about technology, satellites, and quantum radars, it's easy to forget that many decisions involving power and dominance are also born from symbolism. And that's precisely why we need to look to the past, or rather, to a past that has never stopped influencing the present. In the heart of Tibet, among ancient temples and manuscripts preserved for centuries, there exists a figure that has always been tied to the fate of Asia, the Nechung oracle. This oracle is not merely a cultural relic. For centuries, it served as the spiritual advisor to the Dalai Lamas, guiding political and religious decisions through visions, trances, and rituals. And among these visions, there is one in particular that draws attention today, a prophecy tied to the year of the tiger and the arrival of a metallic eye among the clouds. Can you imagine what that might mean in today's context? In 1950, the last year of the tiger before China's invasion of Tibet, the oracle reportedly predicted great disasters for the nation and warned of a shadow that would come from the east with claws of fire and a voice of thunder. Many interpreted this metaphor as a reference to the Chinese army. But with the advancement of technology and invisible strategies of domination, this image gains new layers of interpretation. Think about the symbolism, a metallic eye among clouds that sees everything. Sound familiar? It's hard not to connect this description to the modern concept of satellites, motherships, and even quantum radars. In times when every movement is monitored from the sky, it doesn't seem so absurd to imagine that an ancient prophecy might be coming true, albeit in a way the monks could never have foreseen. And that's not the only prediction. Other Tibetan texts mention beings of light that would appear in the skies, bringing with them the mirror of truth and the weight of judgment. These writings were long treated as mythology or spiritual poetry. But what if, instead of metaphors, they were describing, in the language of their time, something they actually saw? In recent years, interest in these prophecies has resurfaced. Researchers have begun revisiting forgotten manuscripts and celestial maps drawn by monks, comparing their visions to astronomical phenomena and geopolitical patterns. The connection to modernity is disturbing. We're no longer talking about legends. We're talking about recurring patterns, and ones that seem to align with critical moments in history. In fact, some specific dates cited in the texts align with the launches of major Chinese projects like FAST and Shenfan. Coincidence? Perhaps. But when coincidences start piling up, it's worth paying closer attention. After all, how many times has history shown us that spiritual and political power walk hand in hand? What's intriguing is that the Chinese government maintains an ambiguous relationship with these traditions. On one hand, it represses religious and cultural expressions in Tibet. On the other, it quietly invests in preserving certain manuscripts and historical structures linked to the oracle. Why protect something that is supposedly outdated? Is it respect for tradition, or fear of something not yet fully understood? There are records of unofficial visits by scientists and military officials to specific temples, always under the radar of the press. What are they looking for there? Ancient wisdom? Symbolic codes that might be hidden in the scriptures? In times when technology and esotericism walk so closely together, it's not unreasonable to think that China is seeking an edge on all fronts, even in those where science has yet to fully reach. And what if those ancient monks really did see something? Something that crossed the skies, that watched in silence, and that we're only now beginning to decipher with the eyes of technology? The truth might be where we least expect it. Few plans have been as meticulously constructed, and at the same time, so little understood outside China's borders as Made in China 2025. Officially, it is a strategy to modernize the national industry, reduce dependence on foreign technology, and transform the country into an autonomous powerhouse in key areas such as robotics, artificial intelligence, aerospace, and biotechnology. But behind this discourse of industrial development lies a much deeper, and perhaps more ambitious, structure than most imagine. What sets this plan apart from other economic initiatives is the way it intertwines science, defense, space, and informational control. It's not just about building more modern factories, but about creating an ecosystem where everything, absolutely everything, is interconnected. From the drones launched by Geoton to the satellites of Shenfan, passing through facial recognition algorithms and urban surveillance platforms, everything is part of a carefully assembled puzzle. In practice, this means that each technological advancement doesn't emerge in isolation. It is part of a gear that turns silently but consistently. When China unveils a new radar system or a combat robot, it's not just a show of strength. It's the execution of a long-term plan aimed not just at competing, but at leading. Leading through data, automation, monitoring, and above all, with silent presence. This project is also a direct response to the vulnerability the country felt for decades by relying on external suppliers for microchips, strategic software, and essential components. Made in China 2025 arises as both a shield and a sword. It protects the country's autonomy while offering a platform for offense. Not military, but economic and informational. And this expansion is not limited to Chinese borders. Through partnerships, infrastructure investments, and the provision of technology to emerging countries, China has been exporting not just products, but its technological model. Surveillance platforms, urban monitoring systems, 5G telecommunications networks, all of this reaches allied countries as aid, but comes loaded with code, protocols, and backdoors for remote control. The plan also envisions dominance over the so-called perception economy. This includes technologies that read behavior patterns, emotions, and human intentions. Imagine a system capable of predicting protests, controlling social flows, or adjusting information campaigns in real time based on population data analysis. This is no longer fiction. Prototypes are already being tested in urban centers within China itself. All of this creates a new form of power. A power that doesn't impose itself with tanks on the streets, but with algorithms that predict your steps, with cameras that recognize faces even in crowds, with satellites that track economic movements before they are completed. And the most frightening part, all of it is within national legality, supported by laws designed to ensure absolute control. The image that forms when connecting the dots is of a country shaping the future with a plan written between the lines of the present. And that's where the question arises, one that disturbs both analysts and ordinary citizens. If China reaches this level of complete technological dominance, what comes next? What will be the next step when all others have already been taken? Because if Made in China 2025 is, as many suggest, only the first chapter, what awaits us in the second? Each piece of this technological enigma reveals more than isolated advancements. They point to a coordinated movement where science, strategy, and symbolism walk side by side. This is not just about smart drones, watchful satellites, or telescopes listening to the cosmos. It's about an invisible architecture being built with precision, designed not just to oversee the present, but to control the future. And perhaps the most unsettling realization is that, while the world discusses the now, this structure is already stretching silently beneath our feet and above our heads. This story is just one piece, and one day, maybe you'll see the entire puzzle. If this made you think, subscribe, like the video. It helps the channel grow. Don't forget to share. After all, more voices mean more discoveries.